A rumble so low as to be inaudible, growing, throbbing, then fuming into a thundering roar. The earthquake starts only it's not like any earthquake in recorded history. In California the mountains shake like ferns in a breeze. The mighty Pacific rears back and piles up into a mountain of seawater more than 2 miles high, hence starts its race eastward. With the force of 1,000 armies the wind attacks, ripping, shredding everything in its supersonic bombardment. The unbelievable mountain of Pacific seawater follows the wind eastward, burying Los Angeles and San Francisco as if they were but grains of sand. Nothing, but nothing, stops the relentless, overwhelming onslaught of wind and ocean. Across the continent the 1,000-mile-per-hour wind wreaks its hell, its unholy vengeance, everywhere, mercilessly, unceasingly. Every living thing is ripped into shreds while being blown across the countryside, and earthquakes leave no place untouched. In many places the Earth's molten sublayer breaks through and spreads a sea of white-hot liquid fire to add to the holocaust. Within 3 hours the fantastic wall of seawater moves across the continent, burying the wind-ravaged land under 2 miles of seething water coast to coast. 4. In a fraction of a day all vestiges of civilization are gone, and the great cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, New York, Boston, are nothing but legends. Barely a stone is left where millions walked just a few hours before. A few lucky ones who managed to find shelter from the screaming wind on the lee side of a high mountain peak, such as Mt. Massive, watch the sea of molten fire breaking through the quaking valleys below. The raging waters follow at supersonic speeds, piling higher and higher, steaming over the molten earth fire, and rising almost to their feet. Only great, high mountains such as this one can withstand the cataclysmic onslaught. North America is not alone in her death throes. Central America suffers the same cannonade, wind, earth fire, and inundation. South America finds the Andes not high enough to stop the cataclysmic violence pounded out by nature in her berserk rage. In less than a day, Ecuador, Peru, and western Brazil are shaken madly by the devastating earthquake. The Andes are piled higher and higher by the Pacific's supersonic onslaught as it surges over itself against the mountains. The entire continent is burned by molten earth fire, buried under cubic miles of catastrophically violent seas, then turned into a frozen hell. Everything freezes. Man, beast, plant, and mud are all rock hard in less than 4 hours. 5. Europe cannot escape the onslaught. The raging Atlantic piles higher and higher on itself, following the screeching wind eastward. The Alps, Pyrenees, Urals, and Scandinavian mountains are shaken, then heaved even higher when the wall of seawater strikes. Western Africa and the sands of the Sahara vanish in nature's wrath, under savage attack by wind and ocean. The area bounded by Zaire, South Africa, and Kenya suffers only severe earthquakes and winds, little inundation. Survivors there marvel at the sun, standing still in the sky for nearly half a day. Eastern Siberia and the Orient suffer a strange late indeed, as though a giant subterranean scythe sweeps away the Earth's foundations, accompanied by a wind in its screaming symphony of supersonic death and destruction. As the Arctic basin leaves its polar home, eastern Siberia, Manchuria, China and Burma are subjected to the same annihilation as South America. Wind, earth fire, inundation, and freezing, jungle animals are shredded to ribbons by the wind, piled into mountains of flesh and bone, and buried under avalanches of homogenized seawater and mud. Then comes the sudden, seemingly infinite supply of terrible, instantly paralyzing temperature drop of 180 degrees F. Not man, beast, plant, muck, earth, nor water is left unfrozen in the entire Eastern Asian continent, most of which remains below sea level. 6. Antarctica and Greenland, with their ice caps, now rotate around the Earth in the torrid zone, and the fury of wind and inundation marches on for 6 days. During the 6th day the oceans start to settle in their new homes, running off the high grounds. On the 7th day the horrendous rampage is over. The Arctic Ice Age is ended, and a new Stone Age begins. The oceans, the great homogenizers, have laid down another deep layer of mud over the existing strata in the Great Plains, as exposed in the Grand Canyon, Painted Desert, Monument Valley, and the Badlands. The Bay of Bengal Basin, just east of India, is now at the North Pole. The Pacific Ocean, just west of Peru, is at the South Pole. Greenland and Antarctica, now rotating equatorially, find their ice caps dissolving madly in the tropical heat. Massive walls of water and ice surge toward the oceans, taking everything, from mountains to plains, in gushing, heaving paths, while creating immense seasonal moraines. In less than 25 years the ice caps are gone, and the oceans around the world rise over 200 feet with the newfound water. The torrid zone will be shrouded in a fog for generations from the enormous amounts of moisture poured into the atmosphere by the melting ice caps. New ice caps begin to form in the new polar areas. 7. Greenland and Antarctica emerge with verdant, tropical foliage. Australia is the new, unexplored continent in the North Temperate Zone, with only a few handfuls of survivors populating its vastness. New York lies at the bottom of the Atlantic, shattered, melted by earth fire, and covered by unbelievable amounts of mud. Of San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, Dallas and Boston, not a trace is left. They all will join the legends of the 7 cities of Cibola. What's left of Egypt emerges from its Mediterranean inundation new and higher, still the land of the ages. The commonplace of our time becomes the mysterious Baalbek of the new era. A new era. Yes, the cataclysm has done its work well. The greatest population regulator of all does once more for man what he refuses to do for himself and the planet on which he lives, and drives the pitiful few who survive into a new Stone Age. After this cataclysm we join Noah, Adam and Eve, Atlantis, Mu, and Olympus, and Jesus joins Osiris, Taaroa, Zeus, and Vishnu. 9. The Great Floods 11. Noah, Adam and Eve, Vishnu, Osiris. What did they have in common? They represent eras ages apart and yet, somehow, they all join hands in the next cataclysm, and walk with us. There are others who walk with us, too, men of science, long forgotten, those who first saw that these tumbles, these cataclysmic catastrophes, or revolutions, of the Earth's shell have happened before, countless times. J. André de Luc in 1779 and Georges Cuvier in 1812 were the foremost. Dolomieu, the famous mineralogist, joined the consensus, as did Escher and Forel, the Swiss geologists, also J. André de Luc Jr. and von Buch. They all agreed that the cataclysms were caused by sudden revolutions in the wrong direction by the surface of the Earth. Cuvier, in his Theory of the Earth, first published in 1812, based his conclusions on his unparalleled correlative research in stratigraphy, comparative anatomy, and paleontology. As a matter of fact, Cuvier was the founder of the science of comparative anatomy, based on his pioneering, self-taught work in that field. At that time he wrote, "Every part of the Earth, every hemisphere, every continent, exhibits the same phenomenon. There has, therefore, been a succession of variations in the economy of organic nature. The various catastrophes which have disturbed the strata, have given rise to numerous 12 shiftings of this continental basin. It is of much importance to mark, that these repeated irruptions and retreats of the sea have neither been slow nor gradual. On the contrary, most of the catastrophes which occasioned them have been sudden, and this is especially easy to be proved, with regard to the last of these catastrophes. I agree, therefore, with him. Deluc and Ptolemy, in thinking that if anything in geology be established, it is, that the surface of our globe has undergone a great and sudden revolution, the date of which cannot be much earlier than 5 or 6,000 years ago. Also, one preceding revolution at least had put the continents under water, perhaps 2 or 3 eruptions of the sea. These alternations now appear to me to form the problem in geology that it is of most importance to solve. In order to solve it satisfactorily, it would be necessary to discover the cause of these events. These ideas have haunted, I may almost say have tormented me, during my researches among fossil bones. Researches which embrace but a very small part of those phenomena of the age preceding the last general revolution of the globe, and which are yet intimately connected with all the others. Many attempts have been made to answer the charge made to the geological profession by Cuvier to explain these sudden revolutions in the wrong direction. 13. Among others, Velikovsky tried it through his studies of myths and legends, Hapgood tried it, Hugh Brown attempted, and in the process amassed a tremendous library of geological data. Every time the cataclysmic concept has risen, the beast has been stoned, burned at the stake, beaten to a pulp, and buried with a vengeance, but the corpse won't stay dead. Each time, it raises the lid of its coffin and says in sepulchral tones, "You will die before I." The latest of the challengers is Professor Frank C. Hibben, who in his book, The Lost Americans, said, "This was no ordinary extinction of a vague geological period which fizzled to an uncertain end. His death was catastrophic and all-inclusive. What caused the death of 40 million animals? The corpus delicti in this mystery may be found almost anywhere. Their bones lie bleaching in the sands of Florida and in the gravels of New Jersey. They weather out of the dy terraces of Texas and protrude from the sticky ooze of the tar pits off Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. The bodies of the victims are everywhere. We find literally thousands together, young and old, full with d.im, calf with cow. The muck pits of Alaska are idled with evidence of universal death, a picture of quick extinction. Any argument to the cause must apply to North America, Siberia, and Europe as well." Thomas Y. Crowell Company, New York, Apollo edition, 1961-14. Mammoth and bison were torn and twisted as though by a cosmic hand in a godly rage. In many places the Alaskan muck blanket is packed with animal bones and debris in trainload lots, mammoth, mastodon, bison, horses, wolves, bears, and lions. A faunal population, in the middle of some cataclysmic catastrophe, was suddenly frozen, in a grim charade. Supernatural winds, volcanic burning, inundation and burial in muck, preservation by deep freeze of both torn-up animals and muck. Any good solution to a consuming mystery must answer all of the facts, challenges Hibben. The challenge wouldn't leave me alone. Like a hunger, it gnawed at my subconscious. I could hear the deep tones of Cuvier's challenge, find the cause of these events, still reverberating through the sacred halls of science, ghostly, unanswered. I felt Hibben's challenge, prodding, answer all of the facts. I decided that this cataclysmic concept, this catastrophic end which visits our planet time after time, needed verification or refutation once and for all. The first step was to gather all of the known, accepted data from as many sciences pertaining to our planet as possible: stratigraphy, archaeology, radiology, 15. Anthropology, paleontology, and oceanography, plus cosmology and astronomy, and seismology and oceanography, and paleo-languages such as prehistoric Mayan. Even evolution could not be ignored. Further, cross-correlation of the data between the sciences had in honored. All of the foregoing gave the answer. Although there is enough data in most sciences to indicate that these cataclysms happen, there was not enough in each science to derive the process or prove the concept, but between science cross-correlation showed indeed that the concept was true. Not only did it verify that the events have happened, but disclosed when the last 5 cataclysms were, and what positions the shell of the Earth has been in for the last 35,000 or more years. This was a first-time effort for certain. So, after years of research, beginning in 1949, Cuvier's challenge had an answer. Yes, indeed, cataclysms do happen, but I had not yet found the answer to his challenge, find the cause of these events. It would take me 20 more years to find the cause, the trigger of cataclysms. What makes them start? And further, exactly what is it that happens after it starts? WH.it is the process of a cataclysm. Finally, what is the timetable of cataclysms? It was obvious already from the data that it was nonlinear. Was it a mathematical function that we could derive from the data? Or is it random and frustrating in its unpredictability? The more learned, the more to be discovered and learned. 16. Meanwhile, what a chase! And what a dramatic story of the Earth's history we uncovered. Civilizations of more than 20,000 years ago, more advanced than our wildest imagination. Prehistoric legends from Greece, Egypt, India, and South America which became history instead of legend. Lost continents in the Atlantic and Pacific which became dated realities, with logical reasons for their sudden disappearance. Yes, Vishnu came alive. A man who lived through a cataclysm many thousands of years ago, actually 10 cataclysms ago. Now he is known as the Hindu god of 10 resurrections from the waters. Osiris was rediscovered. He was the Jesus of his time, a man of Egypt, some 15,000 years ago. Noah smiled at us from the pages of the Epic of Gilgamesh. He actually was a Sumerian named Unapishtim, who lived just around 7,000 years ago. The ark he built is more than legend. The process of a cataclysm is known now. Look at the cross-section of the Earth inside the front cover. You'll see 2 molten layers, the yellow ones. The important one is the thin molten layer starting 60 miles down, extending 60 miles deeper to 120 miles below the surface of the Earth. The thick, deep molten layer, starting 1,800 miles down at the bottom of the mantle, and extending 1,300 miles deeper, is the outer core. Seismology has proven these 2 yellow layers to be molten, and they are white hot. Over 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. 17. The outer, 60-mile thick layer is the one which supplies the volcanoes with the molten lava they spew forth. Inside the Earth, the electrical and magnetic structure of the interior makes these layers act as if they were near solid, or plastic. As long as the interior and magnetic and electrical structure of the Earth maintains its orderliness, this old Earth keeps on rotating on axis in a normal manner. If anyone doubts that Antarctica's ice cap is growing, it has been proven that it is growing at the rate of a Lake Ontario per year. So is Greenland growing. Since they are not centered on the Earth's axis of rotation, they develop centrifugal forces coupling with each other, in a direction perpendicular to the Earth's axis. It's like swinging a bucket of water around yourself on a rope. The water stays in the bucket. If you did not have the restraining rope, the bucket and water would fly away. In the case of the ice caps, the restraining tope is gravity, which keeps these 2 ice caps landlocked. Since these ice caps therefore cannot fly away, they resolve their problem by trying to pull the entire shell of the Earth above the 60-mile thick molten layer around the interior of the Earth. As long as the electrical and magnetic structure is maintained inside the Earth, the ice caps cannot pull the shell around to lay hem to go to the equator, and we maintain our orderly, daily, monthly, yearly rotation. 18. Right now we don't know why. Every few thousand years on a varying timetable, the magnetic and electrical orderliness in the shallow molten layer is disorganized. Further, it is not known by what means it is disrupted. It has to be a way which lowers those energies to the extent that the shallow molten layer is allowed to act as a free liquid, letting the molten layer act as a molten liquid which then serves as a lubricant for the ice caps to pull the shell around the Earth's interior so as to have the ice caps shift about 90 degrees into the torrid zone. In 1/4 to 1/2 a day, the geographic poles move to the torrid zone, and all hell lets loose. The atmosphere and the Earth's oceans and lakes don't shift with the shell, they just keep on rotating west to east, and at the equator that speed is about 1037 miles per hour. It has to be, normally, to make 1 revolution per day. So, while the shell shifts with the poles going to the equator, the winds and oceans continue eastward, blowing and flooding across the Earth at supersonic speeds, inundating continents with water miles deep, destroying everything with which man ever dealt, including himself. That's a summary of the process. Now what about the trigger? This turned out to be the most elusive piece of the whole puzzle. We couldn't rely on some supernatural assumption, like sometime happenings in the heavens of a vague character which actually violated the laws of nature. No, it had to be 19. Something natural, a part of nature's ordinary structure, which disrupts the Earth's inner electrical and magnetic structure whenever a cataclysm happens. It also has to be a kind of happening which decreases the inner electrical and magnetic forces to the extent that they cannot support keeping the shallow molten layer acting as if it were plastic, or near solid. We once thought that severe sun spots could be the cause, because they do disrupt the Earth's inner electrical and magnetic structure, but we were wrong. The time wasted on that assumption was the price for dealing in assumptions rather than facts. It was a bad detour to take. What was necessary was to be patient, to take more time, to assemble more facts, and use our most valuable tool, analytical reasoning. The solution, whatever it might be, would come. The derivation of the process us a greater understanding of prehistoric events. For instance, you can see that ice ages are not a matter of advancing and retreating ice. It's simply that different areas of the Earth are in polar regions at different times, for different durations of time. Changes between positions take place in a fraction of a day, and the accompanying supersonic deluges deposit the various huge stratas we find in the walls of the Grand Canyon, Painted Desert, Monument Valley, the mountains around Mexican Hat, Canyon de Chelly, and the Moki Dugway. 20. The story around the world gives silent testimony. The Beresovka mammoth, frozen in mud, with buttercups in his mouth. The age of the gorges below Niagara Falls and St. Anthony's Falls, both about 7,000 years. The sudden end of the Laurentian Basin ice cap in Canada, about 11,500 years ago. The uninterrupted evolution on the Galapagos, over 11,000 years. The geological datings in the Murrumbidgee River Basin system in Australia, showing the end of an ice cap there about 11,500 years ago. The age of fossil bones taken from the Wilshire Boulevard tar pits, over 11,000 years. The sudden end of all work in the prehistoric city of Tiahuanaco, Bolivia, 11,500 years ago. Leonard Woolley's great work in the Holy Land, dating Nose Flood at about 6,000 years ago. The end of the Wisconsin ice cap, about 29,000 years ago. The sudden 200-foot rise of the oceans all over the world, about 7,000 years ago. 21. The sudden rise of the St. Lawrence River bed 7,000 years ago. The changing levels of the shoreline of the Hudson Bay in Canada. The huge granite blocks from the Alps, sitting on the eastern slopes of the Jura Mountains at 4,000 feet above sea level. The great legendarian Fraser's uncovering of over 8,000 verified separate inundation survival legends in the Malay Peninsula region. The Pajark Marsh in Australia, which shows a quick extinction of many species, including humans, 11,500 years ago. The Piri Reis map, showing the North Pole in Egypt. The Egyptian water clock, showing agreement with the Piri Reis map. Granite on top of the mountains around Death Valley in California. The great stratifications of the Grand Canyon, Painted Desert, Monument Valley, and Badlands, each layer homogeneous, showing it to be deposited there suddenly by fantastic amounts of super swift water. 22. The present growth of the Antarctic ice cap, approximately 293 cubic miles of ice per year. The legends from primitive man in Tierra del Fuego at the southern tip of South America of the day the sun set in the wrong direction. The legends from primitive man in Peru of the day the sun stood still. The legends from Malayan and Sumatran tribal aborigines of the long night. The Varv Earth Strait accounts in Renshell, Minnesota, and Hackensack, New Jersey, which conform with each other. The prevalence of jade in the Orient, which is material heaved up from the mantle, near equatorial pivot points during a cataclysm. The fantastic evidence of burgeoning tropical plants in Arctic Siberia, Alaska and Antarctica, frozen and preserved for thousands of years in a fraction of a day during a cataclysm. The similarity of languages the world over, from Polynesian to Greek, to Egyptian, to Mayan, to Eskimo, to Yakut, to Oriental, and more. The footprints of dinosaurs, imprinted in beds of 23. Deposited mud, frozen before the prints could deteriorate, remaining frozen for thousands of years to allow the mud prints to ossify for us to sec as dinosaur in rock beds today. The correlation of ice ages, stone ages, and quick extinctions of all species the world over. The survival of primitive life at the equatorial pivot points, the last two being the Malay Peninsula and the Galapagos, both now rife with lizards. The existence of a coral reef on the floor of the Arctic Ocean. And more, and more, and more, and more, give us a prehistoric historic picture of the positions of the Earths in two dining the past 35,000 or more years. The overwhelming evidence, when put in order, gives a dramatic picture of which areas have been at the North Pole, when they moved to the pole, when they moved away from the pole, and how long they were there. The chart is on the next page. Notice that the end of an era is the same as the start of the next era. Although the chart is in terms of years ago and years duration, do remember that the change from one era to the next occurs in a fraction of a day, short enough to be called abrupt. 24. Areas at North Pole. North Polar eras. Start-end duration. Years ago, years. Arctic Ocean 7,000. Sudan Basin 11,500 7,000 4,500. Hudson Bay 18,500 11,500 7,000. Caspian Sea 29,000 18,500 10,500. Wisconsin. 29,000. Yes, Noah, Adam and Eve, Osiris, Taaroa, Zeus, and Vishnu have much deeper meaning now, and, as they join hands and walk with us, we hear Adam and Eve saying, "Listen, for now we can truly share our story with you." 25. The story.